finally, we have reached towards the end of the chapter agriculture. We'll be ending this chapter by discussing about agricultural development. Means the kind of steps that one country can take to ensure that all of the citizens of the respective country is getting an access to food. Okay, and that food should be nutritious. That food should be sufficient in quantity for the survival of that respective family and all the members in that family. All right, and it is usually observed that in developing countries such as also India, okay, there is subsistence farming. All right, and mostly in subsistence farming there is intensive kind of subsistence farming. All right, whereas in advanced or modern or developed countries, for example USA, okay, there you have the kind of measures that are there incorporated for the practice of agriculture is often commercial in nature because the country is developed. All right, so it has access to modern technologies, modern labor, and the kind of farming that is practiced there is commercial in nature. So to ensure that each and everybody, especially in the developing countries I'm talking about, each and everybody is getting that food security, means that ensurety that that respective citizen, all the family members of the respective citizens are getting an access to healthy, nutritious food. All right, we have to ensure that certain measures are being taken, certain steps are being taken, and certain agencies are put up in the required areas so that there could be an agricultural development. And this is especially needed in developing countries, not so much in the advanced areas because they have already reached that stage, but this is imperative in the developing areas. And what are the steps? The steps that will be taken is increasing the cropped area, means the piece of land where you're farming, you can increase that farm area. All right, so that you can incorporate more number of crops. Naturally, if you're increasing your farm area, then you'll be able to grow more than say 1, 2, or 3. You'll be able to grow multiple crops. Okay, then improving irrigation facilities, right? So if a particular crop requires more water and the climatic conditions are not so favorable in that particular area, all right, in a particular time span, then it should be ensured that proper irrigation facilities are being provided to those farmers, to those areas. All right, and the last step could be a use of fertilizers and high yielding variety of seeds. All right, not just fertilizers but also pesticides, so that whatever harm that may fall on that crop, we are getting rid of that. So be it insects, be it rodents, be it some bacteria that attack certain crops. So to get rid of all of those, we can employ the use of pesticides, and we can employ the use of fertilizers to ensure that the crops, they're getting the adequate amount of nutrients. Crops and also the soil is getting the adequate amount of nutrients from which plants can absorb them. All right, then high yielding variety of seeds. So often what because of increase in population, there have been certain genetic modifications. All right, means there have been there has been a human intervention, science, basically a scientific intervention where different crops of different species, varieties, they are mixed together, intermixed, so that a high yielding variety of seed is developed. And when it is sown and it is given the required condition for the respective crop to grow, the variety, you can say the yield that you will be getting from those seeds would be higher, much higher than what you would have gotten from a naturally occurring species or variety of that particular crop. All right, so these are the steps that a developing country could take in order to ensure food security for everybody. Now, we'll be looking upon a comparative case study, a farm in India versus a farm in USA. So we have to keep in mind here, first of all, that India is a developing country, whereas USA is already a developed or a modern country. So there will be very obvious differences in the farming techniques in both these countries. a very obvious difference could be that in India, since it is a highly populated area or highly populated country, the area of the farmland is less. Okay, the area of the farmland is less. So for example, if this particular woman, like you see here in the picture, she may be having 1.5 hectares of land, whereas in USA, a modern farmer, like you can see here, he's on a tractor, he could be having 200 to 300 hectares of land. All right, so such a huge difference in the area of land is there because USA is not so populated, whereas India is a highly populated country. Okay, then in India, a particular farmer may be growing 1 to 2 crops a year. All right, whereas in USA, the same farmer could be growing multiple crops. Okay, uh, since India, the staple food is rice, wheat, so these are the kind of crops, pulses, oil seeds that are taken into consideration when we are talking about 1 to 2 crops per farmer. Okay, whereas in the USA, multiple crops are grown, so cotton, maize, soya bean, different varieties of wheat. Okay, all of these are taken into consideration, and all of, since they have huge areas of and land, so they can definitely opt for mixed farming and all of those techniques. Okay, then a particular farmer in India, they have to buy high yielding varieties from the respective government agricultural offices, right? And often, since they are poor, okay, so they may even resort to taking loans. All right, and the next thing about farming technique in India is that mostly the farmers opt for subsistence farming. So that subsistence farming could be, just sticking to the definition that the farmer could be incorporating low capital, okay, into his farming techniques, and the technology involved would also be low, not modern, and whatever produce he is producing would be actually consumed by his family members. Or there could be intensive farming where a certain surplus is grown, where all of the labor capital is, invested into the farming areas, farming techniques, and whatever surplus he is getting, he is selling all of that in the nearby markets. Why selling and why not storing? Because in India there is a shortage in storage facilities. So shortage in storage facilities. All right, so what points have I dictated to you till now? I have dictated that in India a farmer may uh, you know, take advice from the neighboring farmers or from the government agricultural offices, where he could get that advice from people that, you should opt for high yielding variety of seeds. And some farmers who are very poor, who are only able to perform subsistence farming, they may not have all of that capital to procure that high yielding variety of seeds. So they may even resort to taking loans from the bank. Whereas some farmers who are at least able to do at least able to afford into the intensive farming techniques, they could easily buy those high yielding variety of seeds. Then, since there is no modern technology in India, by modern technology I mean the farmers, they are poor, right? In comparison to the farmers of the USA, and all of these points are in comparison to that of USA. All right, so since comparatively they are poorer, so they would not every farmer would be exposed to modern technologies. Some farmer could be using them, but not everybody. In general, on an average, the farmer is poor, and he is not able, or she is not able to resort to a modern technological equipment, like you can see here in the picture. In USA, the tractor is involved, and the kind of, you can say, attachments that are there to each, you can say, part of this horizontal lever like thing, whatever it is called, it's more in number. Whereas in India, the farmers could resort to traditional methods. Like some farmers may resort to renting tractors. Some farmers may even own tractors, but mostly on an average, farmers resort to traditional methods like employing of bullock carts or using a shovel or other equipments to plow the fields. Okay, then the about the final product, I told you that since there is a shortage in storage facilities, so they are forced to sell all of their products in the market area. So they are, if they are solely residing to the subsistence area, all of that finished product could be consumed by the family members. And if there is a little bit of intensive farming employed, then they could sell everything to the nearby markets. But since there is a shortage in storage facilities, so they cannot resort to storing them. Even if there is an off season, or even if there is the crops are going bad, still they are forced to not store but rather sell everything. Whereas in comparison, USA have proper storage facilities. So whatever surplus they are producing, they are whatever surplus they are producing, they are able to store them. So whatever they are produced, if they are selling them to the market, right? But the extra, the surplus, they have proper storage areas to store them, so that they can sell them in another season. All right. And they grow multiple crops. They have modern technological equipments. All right. So they employ heavy use of chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides. In India, a farmer may resort to organic methods, right? Some rich farmers may buy chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides, but in USA mostly the farming techniques involve the use of chemical fertilizers, chemical pesticides. Then, oftentimes the farmer, whatever soil nutrients is there, he's sending that soil sample to the respective laboratories, where the respective person concerned is advising him that all these nutrients are lacking. So you may need to incorporate them by the use of fertilizers. So the farmer, an average farmer in USA, is so modern that he has the convenience, or he has the resource where he can easily obtain a satellite picture of his farm area. And through that satellite picture, he can determine that yes, these are the areas where I need to employ more fertilizers, and these are the areas that have adequate fertilizing nutrients there. All right. So the employment of modern technologies, also equipments, machinery, such as you can see in this picture, tractors. So there are tractors, there are threshers. All right. There are threshers, there are tractors, okay, and there are a lot of other mechanical equipments involved, drillers, harvesters. So all of these they have the capacity to own everything. They are not taking up all of these on rent, like an average farmer in India must be doing, but rather they are owning all of these, right? So they have the resource, they have the access to everything. So definitely, when all of these points are listed, you can easily determine that a farmer in USA is not relying on the technique of subsistence or intensive. Rather, he is solely committed to commercial farming. Means whatever he is. See, I'm not generalizing. There would be some farmers who would be involved in intensive or subsistence farming, but on an average, if you talk about it, the farmers in the USA, they are involved in commercial farming. Means whatever products they are getting from their farmlands, yes, obviously they are using them for for feeding their family members and everybody, but the surplus is always and always being exported either outside the country or to the respective markets, and they get a lot of profit from them. And often in India, even if there is mixed farming going on, so even if there is the employment of say animals, livestock, all right, so the farmers in India, they have to often take advice from the government agricultural offices, that what kind of you know what kind of fodder I should feed my cattle, what kind of important steps I should take to rear them. All right. Whereas a farmer in USA, if he is participating in mixed farming, then the kind of techniques he is using to ensure that all of his cattle, all of the livestock, they are in in the best of the condition, is very very advanced. So the use of modern technologies, use of modern equipments, whereas the farmer in India on an average is solely reliant, solely dependable upon some officers who can advise him what kind of steps he should or she should take for their respective livestock. All right. So from this long discussion, we can conclude that farms in India still rely mainly on traditional and labor intensive methods. Why? Because India is a developing country, all right? Whereas in USA, most farming is commercial because USA is already a developed country. USA is already a modern country. Okay. Then farmers in the USA work more like businessmen since mostly they are involved in commercial techniques. So they have to have that business acumen because then only they will be able to survive, right? They have to have that acumen in order to, which are the markets where I'll sell my crops so I can have the maximum number of profit. Okay, and if they have to persuade somebody, then what are the various techniques that they can use? All right, so they are farmers, but they have to think and they have to act like businessmen. All right, now we will be discussing some questions, and after these questions we'll come to the end of this chapter, and towards the end I'll be taking you through a summarization where I'll be discussing the key points to you. So coming back to the questions, what is agriculture? Agriculture is that scientific system, that scientific method where crops are cultivated, plants are cultivated, they are sown, they are grown, they are harvested, and besides crops, besides plants, there is also a rearing of livestock. All right. Also, the word agriculture, if you divide it into two parts, agri and culture, culture means cultivation, development, rearing, ensuring that the plants or the livestock, they are getting the important nutrients for their survival, for their growth, so that we can reap fruits from them. And agri means soil. So mostly the rearing and the cultivation of plants and crops, but also the rearing of livestock is incorporated into agriculture, and it is a scientific method. There is a particular proper system involved. Then name the factors influencing agriculture. Factors such as terrain, the topography, right? Then soil, the texture of soil, whether a soil is alluvial, whether a soil is black, whether a soil is sandy, right? Then rainfall, climatic conditions like rainfall or the amount of water that is required. All right. Then temperature, okay, whether a particular crops requires high temperature, low temperature. Then also sunshine. Some crops, like we have seen wheat, they need sunshine at the time of harvesting, right? So sunshine. Also humidity. So humidity is actually relational to the rainfall or water content. So all of these factors are there that influence agriculture, that influence where a particular crop would be growing. All right. Then what is shifting cultivation? What are its disadvantages? Shifting cultivation, if you may remember, it is a kind of farming a technique where farmers, they shift from one place to another. So there is no a permanent area to where they are residing and practicing farming. Rather, they are shifting from one place to another, and often in areas of moderate high temperature, high rainfall, they locate a place where the soil availability of nutrients in the soil is optimum to its optimum, where they are having the favorable conditions for the growth of their crops, and they reside there. They grow their crops. They're involved in agriculture there. And as soon as the climatic conditions change, as soon as the rainfall pattern changes, or as soon as the soil is absorbed, is depleted of all its nutrient contents, what do? They chop away all the plants or trees or whatever that are there, okay, and they burn them. Then they use that ashes, and they take them to other piece of farming area, in some other area, in some other land, where again they look for the adequate soil texture, temperature, rainfall, everything, and then they practice their farming there. And when that second piece of land also gets depleted of its nutrients, or the climate starts varying, then they again move towards a third area. So what are they doing? They're hopping from one place to another. They are shifting, and The disadvantages, they are very, very extreme. Why? Because they are burning, right? They are burning down the remnants of whatever organic matter that are there, that were there actually in that respective area of land. So since they're burning away the remnants, all right, then what are they aiding towards? They are aiding towards deforestation, all right. Then they're also aiding towards the they are responsible for the turning of that vegetative piece of land into a wasteland, right? Why a wasteland? Because since they have burned everything, since they have burned the area, and they have, you know, extinguished all the possibility of that land to acquire the nutrients again. So they have, ensured that there could be no further vegetation that would grow on that respective area. Hence, it is deforested permanently and it has been turned into a wasteland. So there is no possibility of agriculture, obviously, but there is also no possibility of a very, optimum vegetation. So no vegetation. So these are the disadvantages that are involved in shifting cultivation, and they have numerous names are there. In India, it is known as chuming, okay, and it is often done in northeast region of India, okay. Then you have what is plantation agriculture. In plantation agriculture, usually there is one kind of crop that is grown. So usually one crop is grown, and what is it grown for? It is used for a commercial purpose. So commercial growth or commercial cultivation, okay, that a particular piece of crop is subjected to. And it is also ensured that there is, since it is for commercial purpose, so there has to be high labor, and there has to be high capital, right? Then ensuring that that respective plantation crop is getting the required conditions, sunlight, rainfall, temperature, all of these. What are the important plantation crops? They are rubber, they are cotton, they are tea and coffee. Remember, tea and coffee, I had explained to you that they are grown on hill slopes, okay, in plantation areas. So all of these are there, okay. Then name the fiber crops and name the climatic conditions required for their growth. So there are two fiber crops that are there. First is cotton and second is jute. So cotton, we know that cotton requires high temperature plus high rainfall, right? So since both the temperature and the water condition is high, the kind of soil that cotton will grow upon would be, the favorable is black soil, all right, but it also grows well on alluvial soil. But the favorable soil is always the black soil. Okay, then there are two specific conditions that are required for the growth of cotton. One is that cotton needs 210 frost free days, and it needs bright sunshine. It needs bright sunshine. All right. So these are the conditions that are required for the growth of cotton. Next fiber crop is jute, and jute, if you remember, is also known as golden fiber, right? Then the kind of conditions that are required for the growth of jute is also more or less same as that of cotton. So jute also needs high temperature, and jute also needs high amount of rainfall. And the kind of soil that jute needs for its growth, I am writing it over here. The kind of soil that is favorable for the growth of jute is often the alluvial soil. Okay, so cotton needs high temperature, high rainfall. Jute also needs high temperature and high rainfall, but the kind of soil favorable for jute is alluvial, and the most favorable soil for cotton is the black soil. After that comes alluvial soil. There are two specific, very specific conditions for the growth of cotton. That is, it needs 210 frost-free days plus bright sunshine. Then you have to give reason. In India, agriculture is a primary activity. Yes, it is because in India, India is a developing country, okay, And India is a developing country, and two-thirds of the population in India is involved in agriculture. It is involved in farming. So India is a primary activity over here. Okay, and more than half of the population, they are involved in agriculture or farming. Then different crops are grown in different regions. I have already explained this. This is because there are different conditions required for the growth of different crops, and these conditions could vary depending upon the terrain or the topography, varying upon soil, upon sunlight, upon temperature, okay, upon rainfall. So all of these, they are different from place to place, and since they are different from place to place, they are affecting the growth of crops in different regions. That is why different crops are grown in different regions. And in India, since the rural of the population is involved in agriculture and is a developing country on top, so we can establish that in India agriculture is a primary activity. Then the last question that we have over here is, you have to distinguish between primary activities and tertiary activities. So if you may remember, just in the beginning of the chapter, I had explained you that primary activities involve all of those processes that are there in economy. Okay, where for the finished product of a particular you can say item or object, okay, whatever initial activities are being done, and these activities are often natural, plus also there is an intervention of human, because human beings, they are procuring these items from natural resources. So rather I can list it as procurement procurement of the product from the natural resources, right? Procurement of the product from the natural resources, and the whatever kind of agriculture or sericulture or horticulture one is involved in, all of these would come under primary activity, because procurement of the product from the natural resources. So crops, okay, trees, plants, they grow naturally as well, but when there is a human intervention, so we are procuring all those crops, all those final products from nature, right? Then the rearing of animals, so the milk that we are getting, the meat that we are getting, the wool that we are getting, the silk that we are getting, all of these, okay, honey that we are getting from apiculture, from bees, right, from the culture of bees. So all of these, the procurement of these products, so that they can be further sent to the respective industries, to the respective factories, so that they can be processed into our desired product. Remember the example of bread that I gave you? So the procurement of the harvested crops of say wheat, okay, comes under the primary activity for the production of bread. This secondary activity would involve the processing of that harvested wheat crop into grains, and then the further processing of those grains into that loaf of bread that we are getting as a packaged item. Okay, tertiary activities involves the final trade systems or the transportation system. Okay, so the trade, the transport, the distribution, okay, that finished object is being subjected to, so that finally that loaf of bread is getting available to you from the factory to the nearby market where you can go and buy them. Those activities are then involved in the tertiary activities. Then subsistence farming and intensive farming. Intensive farming is a type of subsistence farming, right? Subsistence farming is farming for, you can say, those farmers or that farming technique where you have low technology, right? And the farming is done merely for the subsistence of that particular family. So it is the farmer is poor, and there is a mere, you can say, survival of the family, right? There is no commercial activity involved. Whereas intensive farming, the word intensive means extreme, right? So incorporating all of the resources. The farmer incorporates all of the resources towards farming, right? So whatever labor is there, labor has to be high because he is incorporating sources, right? So high labor. In subsistence farming, the family members would be involved. In intensive farming, there would be additional people involved apart from or besides the family members, right? So high labor, and whatever product that he's getting, he is obviously using that for the survival of his whole family, but he's also selling the surplus. So he is selling the surplus. The surplus would not be so much as was in the case of that US farmer, if you remember that comparison. But whatever surplus is there, he is selling them. So it is not a commercial farming. Okay, it will come under the type of subsistence farming, because the profit is not so much as it is there in the commercial area. Nevertheless, it differentiates itself from the very stereotypical subsistence farming, because ultimately there is a little bit of profit. Ultimately there is a little bit of extra resources and employment of all of them, okay, towards farm. So with the end of this discussion, we are coming towards the end of this chapter. And so we have studied about the definition of agriculture, we have studied about the techniques that are involved in the production of a particular item, okay, the primary, secondary, tertiary activities, and the different kinds of farming, all right, and the major crops, and finally about agricultural development. So in the final part of the chapter, I will be summarizing these important points to you. Finally, we have reached towards the end of the chapter, where I will be discussing and summarizing the important points, the key points that you have to remember in this chapter, and that you have learned all this way. Okay, so starting off, the three sector model in economics: primary, secondary, and tertiary. Primary enlists all those activities that are involved where we are procuring the products from nature, right? So agriculture, the different types of culture that we have studied, okay, all of that are involved in the primary activity. In secondary process is basically the processing, means all those all those products that you got from nature, they are sent to industries or factories so that they could be further processed to make the final product that we'll be using, all right. And the final product that we'll be getting is then moved off towards the tertiary area, where it is given to trade, where it is given to distribution, okay, trade, distribution, transport, and everything, so that you are finally getting that finished product from your nearby market. Then agriculture is the primary sector, since it is involved in sowing, reaping, and finally harvesting, all right, of different crops. And 2/3 of people in India, more than 50% of people all over the world are involved in agriculture. And in India, more than half of its population, 2/3 of people in India are engaged in agricultural activities, all right. Agriculture may be of two types: subsistence and commercial. In subsistence farming, the farmer is poor, he or she does not have enough resources. Whatever resources he's having, he's incorporating everything into farming techniques, all right. And the more or less he is not getting enough profit. But in the case of intensive farming, as we saw, that even if he is getting a little bit of surplus, he is selling all of that in the nearby market, and due to lack of storage facilities, he cannot store them for any commercial use. In commercial farming, the sole purpose of farming is for a large scale use, for export, right? For export or for distribution towards a respective country, right? So in subsistence farming, we saw intensive farming, intensive subsistence, where all the resources are involved, and a certain surplus is getting received by the farmer, and that he is using for his or her profit, right? Then the other types of subsistence farming are shifting cultivation and nomadic herding. Shifting cultivation is often hazardous to nature, because in this farming, the farmer moves from one land to another as soon as the soil fertility gets exhausted, and as soon as the climatic conditions change. And once he or she moves, he chops everything down, and burns the vegetative entities in that piece of land, so ultimately leading to deforestation, all right, and rendering of that vegetative land into a wasteland, a barren land. Then in nomadic herding, there is mostly rearing of livestock, and farmers or rearers of animals, cattle, they move from one area to another in search of food, in search of fodder, and in search of water. So nomadic herding is basically observed in dry conditions. All right. So, for example, the Sahara Desert in the Central Asia, and in India in the Jammu Kashmir and Rajasthan, where in search of food, fodder, and water, farmers or rearers of livestock, they move along with their herd, with their cattle, for all of these resources, okay, from one place to another. Then commercial farming, solely for the purpose of for the production, for the purpose of commercial use, so that the extra and everything could be sold and exported, and a huge profit could be gained. Okay, plantations, where one kind of crop is grown in a whole area, a large area of land. All right, mixed farming, where rearing of livestock is happening along with the cultivation of plants. Commercial grain farming, where a particular grain, such as, for example, wheat, such as maize, such as rice, is grown solely for the use of commercial purposes. So it was observed that commercial grain farming is, taking place in areas where population is not so much, so in a sparsely populated area, so that you can get large amounts of land, large areas of land for the growth of that respective grain. Then agricultural development refers to the efforts made to improve farm production, so that there is a food security, right? So that each and everybody is getting an equal access to nutritious food, to healthy food, for the survival, for the activity, healthy survival and healthy physical activity of all those people. So, agricultural development refers to the efforts made to improve farm production and work towards food security, right? In developing areas, agricultural development is prevalent and it is imperative, whereas in developed regions such as the USA, it is not so much required, because they're already using modern equipments, and there is huge amount of capital, so they are having everything that is required for a sufficient, sustainable kind of farming, and all of that techniques are usually directed towards commercial farming. So this is what you had to learn in this chapter. This is what this whole chapter was about, to introduce you towards the concept of agriculture and how agriculture is kind of, you can say, related towards economy. Okay, how both of them function parallel. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me till here, and I'll be seeing you in the next part, in the next chapter, that is industries, where I'll be discussing more important points with you. So thank you so much, and study well and take care.